the screen, which is 6812253. So go to menti.com, and that's menti.com, and then it's 68122253. And even though children and young people aren't with me today, they inform everything that we do, including presentations like this. So they always have an opening question whenever they're doing the sessions with us, which is, what does the UNCRC mean to you? So have you not heard of it? Have you heard of it? Have you got some knowledge? Or can you name 5 articles and how they link to your work? So the results are coming in thick and fast, and I think there's probably around about 55 plus people on the call right now. So don't worry, I'm going to explain it in a second, but don't want to give too much away. But while you're voting, just so you know, the team that I manage at the college, there's 3 full-time youth and community development workers. That's our professional background. And we have the fab job of going all over the UK to work with as many children and young people as possible who are aged 0 to 25. And our youngest, who's been involved last year, was around about 3. She's 4 now. And even though we go up to 25, we also include parents and carers and advocates and workers if there's part of the puzzle that they might have to bring to whatever we're doing. And I'm going to explain in a little bit what we do. But even though we normally would be out on the road all of the time, and in a normal year, we would probably be working with about 3,000 children and young people face to face. In a COVID year, we're still out and about, but it's all online. So we're still going all over the UK. And we're averaging now, just coming to the end of our first proper year, around about 900 new children and young people that have been involved with us over the last year online, which is still pretty good considering the whole world has changed. So it looks like the voting has tailed off. So 23 of you haven't heard of it. 6 of you have heard of it. 7 have some knowledge, and 1, I'm going to come to you, but I can't because I don't know who you are. You're fine. Had lots of knowledge. So for anybody that didn't know what it was, the UNCRC is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and that was written in 1989 and signed and ratified into UK law in 91-92. So been around for 30 years, and really sets the framework as to how all countries, apart from America, so America's the only one that hasn't signed it, should be doing all they can to give children and young people the best start possible, and really protecting their rights, promoting their rights, but also giving them provision and the opportunity to participate in what's going on. So for us at the college, children's rights really sets the kind of like framework as to what we should be doing as well. And for children and young people that are involved in our program, which is RCPCH&Us, we've had them look at the rights in every single session that we do, and then we've had a group of them that have really identified which do they think are the rights which are most relevant to the work of the college, but also their role within child health. So the top 5, and they've said they're all important and you need to look at them because actually they all really do relate to your work. But for our children and young people that are involved in this project, Article 12 is the right for children and young people's voices to be heard and to have an influence in decisions that affect them. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get what they ask for, but it means that they're part of the conversation.
Well, no. What did you say?
In terms of individual healthcare, that could be, you know, having their views heard about understanding treatments and medicines. If it's about research, then it would be, you know, being able to input into maybe research design. But also we need to think about it in terms of that strategic role as well. So involvement in service design at a broader level, or it could be, you know, maybe they're part of a governance or oversight panel for a research project. Article 23 is the right for children and young people with disabilities to be actively involved in everything that's going on in their life. So again, our young people said that in terms of healthcare, we need to be really on it in terms of how we meet the needs of the accessible information standard. So have we got widget symbols? Are we using PECS, Makaton, BSL? How are we making sure that children and young people that have a different communication need or information preference because of their disability can actually take an active part in research or their health decision making? Article 24 is why you guys are also amazing. So it's the right to the best health and the best health services. Article 28 is the right to education. And our children and young people really did prioritise this within the rights in a health setting, because actually for them, they, you know, really struggle if they've got lots of different needs to be pulled out of school quite a lot, either because they're unwell or because they have to see lots of different clinics or consultants or people supporting them many times in the same week or in the same month, which actually means that they lose their education. I guess within research, we could also equate this to, the right to learn more about other stuff. So, to learn about the whole process of research and to have a right to be able to be educated within that framework too. And Article 31 is the right to rest, relax and play. So children and young people picked that one because actually they said if they've got health needs, it can be really hard to have the chance to be social with their friends, because actually they need services around them to be able to help people to manage their needs. So we've got lots of examples of where children and people can't do extracurricular activities, can't go out at break times at school, can't go and stay at someone's house because people around them, so schools or friends or family, can't manage their diabetes, for example. So, they're really looking to us to make sure that we're able to provide that right to socialization and meeting new people. And actually, an opportunity such as being involved in research is a really nice way to offer something different. And I think that's one of the key things that we always have to try and remember is whatever we're doing, we need to make sure that we make it fun. So, our kind of like model and approach with RCPCH&Us is to try and think in thirds. So a third, has to be fun and engaging and something they want to do. A third of it should be their agenda, because actually if we're meeting, Article 12 and they're right for their voices and views to impact decisions, then they should also be having the chance to, govern some of the session time or the session space. And then a third of it, we're really upfront, is our agenda. And that's because normally we're the paid workers that are there with a purpose. But thinking about it in that thirds model really, keeps us grounded on meeting all of these different articles and rights, but also making sure that they do have chance to do something different and enjoy it, not just us rinse them for data because that meets our needs but maybe doesn't meet their needs. The booklet that you can see on the right hand side, and when the slides go out, all of these will live link to the resources, is Recipes for Rights, which is 15 different games and activities, many of which have been created by children and young people with us, that help you to get children and young people's voice in your work. So it's themed around QI, but of course that could all be shared over to research, but it also just runs through the UNCRC again and explains those 5 rights again that children and young people have said are important in our programs. So for us, just to outline, I guess, our team at the college, we don't get involved in one-to-one conversations about their individual needs. We're involved in the strategic voice. And that's where, children and young people collectively come together to then be involved in shaping and influencing our services. And I think it's always quite important when you're involving children and young people, whether it's in research or, your service planning or, in individual healthcare, that you do have a definition in mind as to what does their voice and engagement and their involvement mean in this context. And it's completely fine to have 4 or 5 different definitions, because actually that will change as the dynamics and as the boundaries and as the context of the piece of work will change as well. But it's also really important that they're involved in defining that with you. So if you are looking to get children and young people involved in research, then really work with them on actually, what is your definition of their engagement? So is it strategic voice like ours? So, they're informing and influencing the overarching kind of like research development, or is it, that their voice in one context is as a research participant, so that actually everyone understands what the different elements are. So always, thinking about the definition of terms is quite important. And I guess another thing which is really useful if you're embarking on any kind of engagement is just to have in your mind the bits of legislation that this. So in lots of places, people involve children and young people because it's the right thing to do. In other places, we need to, explain to others who might be creating barriers as to their involvement, as to why it's so important. And for us, having the legislation behind you really does help. So it's not something we've made up because we thought it was a good idea. It's something that is in, things like the NHS Act and in the NHS Constitution. It's in lots of different pieces of legislation across the country, and non least the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child. So there's lots of kind of like backup as to why engagement is the right thing to do, both altruistically but also legally. And we're not naive in thinking that if you've got maybe blockers within services or within management frameworks, or with funders that are saying no, we just need to get on, we just need to do it, that by spouting a load of law instantly changes that. But what we do know is actually it makes people take a step back, it makes them question, it makes them think, and it might just give you space to be able to create a case for more involvement or better involvement. So for us, we're always trying to make sure that we're getting the most meaningful opportunities for young people to get involved as possible. And sometimes, the bits of legislation help to create those conversations in a more robust way. And there's more bits of information which are online on our website as well. Particularly, we've got a legislation briefing that might be of interest. So just to spend a couple of minutes before we get into the research side on what we do at RCPCH. So as I said, we've got a team of 3 youth workers, and we work with 0 to 25s across the country. We have a model which really does work with everybody, and that's quite different to a lot of other places. And that's our voice diversity model at the bottom. And this definitely could be something that could be carried over to research as well. So we tend to look at children and young people in 3 different groups. So one is as a universal cohort. So basically they're children and young people first. And isn't that the most exciting thing? So, they're just someone who's 13 who loves, I don't know, going and watching football, or, loves music, or loves reading, or, loves watching soaps, or whatever it is. So, they're a child or a young person, and that's their primary, kind of like being. And we tend to work with them through universal settings. So we'll go and see them in schools, in youth centres, in community outreach, like fun days, that kind of stuff. And that's because actually we need to understand at any point, what children and young people are thinking. So not focus on their healthcare, not focus on the fact that they're a researcher, none of that. Just actually, what do children and young people think? Then we've got targeted groups. So they're groups where there's something where they've got an identity or a shared experience that unites them. So for example, a targeted group for us could be a young carers group, or it could be a children in care council, it could be an LGBT forum, or it could be a condition forum like an epilepsy group or something like that. So, we'll work with them through their trusted providers, because if they're not, if we're only going to see them once, maybe we're popping into a PPI session, we need to make sure that actually they've got really good support before, during and after. And they need to be the people that know them well and know their specific needs or their specific circumstances, so that they can pick up the support once we've gone. And I think, we can't impress upon that as much as we want to, about how important it is in any engagement to make sure that, even if you're just popping in for a session, that you've kind of like checked actually that there are good workers in the session that can pick up any extra stuff that comes out of it. And then the third group is specialist voices, and they're the children and young people that have got a very specific background or need that is maybe driving our study or driving our project or piece of work. And we will usually see them in clinics. So we'll see them in outpatient clinic waiting areas, we'll do ward rounds, and we're doing lots of that virtually at the moment anyway, as we've switched from being in hospitals to being online. But in all of our work, we'll include all 3 groups. And I think in the past, there's been a lot of involvement which has, only focused on the targeted or specialist. But for us, it's really, really important that we have all children and young people involved, because actually, in many cases, that's how you make sure that you can triangulate the different experiences and move against institutionalized bias or institutionalized experience. So, for example, if you're doing an epilepsy study, and we're doing a project at the moment on epilepsy, we would never just work with children and young people with epilepsy in that piece of work, because actually, they've got one view, which is, really super specialist, which is important, but maybe they, can't reflect back on what it was like before they had epilepsy, because maybe they've had it from birth, or maybe, they just can't remember. So that's why we need the universal view as well, because actually, it could happen to anyone. So it's important that we also hear from the ones that haven't got it, so they can tell us, what they think it is, how they think it works, what happens. And the targeted group would be young carers, so people who are looking after siblings, for example. So we would always get all 3 groups together so they can learn from each other. Keeps it fun, means that they meet new people, but also means that we're really hearing from lots of different experiences. And I think in research, this is, just as important, because actually, it is really about being able to get that 360 on anything. And, you know, having that kind of voice diversity model helps to do that. The pictures are the words that young people came up with to explain how we work. So normally our work falls into 4 different types of work. So one is about educating others. So it could be educating children and young people on their rights or their responsibilities, or how to access something or get involved, or educating staff on what's important to children and young people, or, you know, sessions like this, how we work. Collaborate is where we bring children, young people, families and workers and services together, because we would like, you know, maybe there's a project that actually needs both of them, and, you know, they need to discuss and understand what's going on from each other's point of view. So maybe, you know, like with research. Engage is where we support children and young people to lead their own work. So, you know, they're in the driving seat, they've identified the issue, they're coming up with the solutions with our support, and they're going to lead out the programme. And change is where we share the platform. So where we support children and young people to really, you know, have impact and influence. So it could be at conferences, it could be at roundtable events, it could be that they've created some resources and then they're sharing them. And I'll show you some of their resources in a bit. So that's kind of our model. And when you get the slides, there's a little bit that's been written about our model, which is now on our Pediatrics 2040 website, which will explain it a little bit more as well. So let's just see if this can go through to the next one. So we should have another vote for you. So sorry, it's a little bit small, but I'll read them out along the bottom. So one of the things that we keep thinking about is what is the most important feature of a child and youth-friendly service. So the options for you to choose from. So what do you think would be the most important feature? Is information for children and young people about involving them, knowledge of children and young people's interests and cultures, having age-appropriate services or spaces, telling young people being able to tell their story once rather than having to repeat it all the time, and getting quick help and referrals. So for you, what do you think is the most important feature of a child and youth-friendly service? So have a little vote, and then I will tell you what the children and young people have said. And there is a little video that you can watch after, which also goes through some of the top bits that they're saying are important for a child and youth-friendly service. So this one's a little bit more mixed than last time. I like the fact that there's dots appearing. I don't know if they're like dots because you're really clever at how you're using Zoom, or if they're dots because the Menti's not working, but I'm liking the confetti that's appearing on screen. So involving children and young people is at the moment the most important feature of a child and youth-friendly service. And you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that that also features very highly for children and young people as well, as does, you know, really thinking about having age-appropriate spaces and services. So there's lots that has come out over the last couple of years about child and youth-friendly services. And like I said, we've got a little video, but because of time, I'll leave it so that you can watch it after, where basically we've kind of charted over the last couple of years what's come up for children and young people. So there's a bit of video from 2019 where they've said it's about communication, it's about using technology in a different way, it's about having quick and easy referrals and getting help when you need it. Then we go to 2020, where there's a little bit from the COVID Book Club, which was a group of young people that reviewed lots of different studies that had been published from lots of different organisations about life under lockdown, so sharing thousands of children and young people's experiences. And they said that actually, you know, to get youth-friendly services, we really need to think about having, you know, good access to information. We need to make sure that it works well virtually, but also, you know, we need to think through things like mental health support. And then just going then into something that was launched in February this year, so for Pediatrics 2040, you know, they're saying that some of the key things is about how people understand them as children and young people. So as well as communication, having a youth-friendly service also means that you take into account their needs around their culture, their identity and their beliefs, and really support that. So, you know, having things like pronouns and understanding, you know, what the difference is, but also how to have a conversation if you're not sure what pronouns to use. So there's lots of different elements to youth-friendly services. And I guess the kind of like question for us is to think about how we can use lots of different strategies to support different voices in clinic, or if you're thinking about research, how we make sure that actually, trainees, researchers, academics, doctors know how to empower children and people, just as this quote says, but really think through lots of different ways to have them involved across the whole span of research. Now, and again, when the slides come out, you'll have all the links that you can just click on each picture. There's lots out there. So I know that you were talking about resources. So we've got some resources about engagement. I think there's like 60 plus that we've created over the years with children and young people on the website that look at, things like games, activities, how to write an engagement plan, about legislation, as I've mentioned, how to involve children and young people in specialised commissioning, for example, all the way through to, how to talk about feelings, how to do stuff around research, which we're going to go through in a second. But there's a couple of other sites which will be of interest. Now, Generation R you might know about already. So they, excuse me, support the Young People's Advisory Group network across the country of young researchers. They've got loads of brilliant resources on their website, but also case studies and contact details of how you can get into one of your YPAGs to talk about your project. Me First has got lots of resources that can be adapted, which is about that individual voice. So if you're thinking about actually how can children and young people be involved in different parts of research, you can use some of the resources and adapt them. So, there's things on there like draw around your hand to work out your support network. There's the House of Wales Worries and Wishes. So all things actually could really be changed to support PPI or in creating some of the research questions, but also that could be used within focus qual research. And the research charter is something that came out of the college probably like 3-4 years ago now. So there was a piece of work that went on by a previous president that wanted to make sure that actually child health research really was prioritised across the sector. And one of the things that was clear that we needed some guidelines and support resources to help children and young people to get involved and to help people, researchers like yourselves, to know what to do. So we worked with children and young people and researchers and trainees and academics across the country and a couple of other big organisations, and really thought through what are the key elements of getting children and young people involved in research. And lots of it is common sense. So make sure that their rights are met, make sure that actually their communication meets their needs, make sure that we're sharing our tips and helping others, but we're also able to encourage and empower children and young people, and that they're supported through the whole process. But the key bit was to make sure that actually we remembered about how they could get involved in lots of different ways. So on the website, there's a couple of different resources that you can look at, which is the charter itself, which you can download and write your name on, stick it up all around work or send it around. But also, there's a guide that explains how we created it. But then there's a huge resource bank now of different examples of children and people being involved in research, or some of the bits around legislation, or how you set up PPI. So that's all on the RCPCH website and is available for free for you. So we did a piece of work with some children and young people about how they wanted to get involved in research. So again, if you just go back to the voting bit. So what do you think they said was a key thing that they wanted to get involved in? So do you think they said it was raising awareness, encouraging others to get involved, developing the research design, helping people to understand consent, involvement in the research process, or in report writing and dissemination of findings? So what do you think that they said that they wanted to get involved with? And from memory, I think we asked, I don't know, something between about 60 and 75 children and young people over a number of different PPI sessions. So what do you think young people said they wanted to get involved in research? So how do you think they wanted to get involved? So was it raising awareness, encouraging others, developing design, consent, involvement in the research process, or report writing and dissemination? What do you think would be the top things that children and young people would choose? Okay, so you'll be very surprised to know that the top one was actually helping people to understand consent. So children and young people said that one of the key issues was that they didn't understand what consent meant, or actually what they were consenting to. And when they were in research trials or you know, research programs, that they were still confused even when they were doing it as to, you know, what their rights were and what their role was. So because we were talking to children and people that had been involved in research, we went to focus groups of young people's advisory groups, so very experienced children and people, and then we did a few universal sessions as well. It was very clear that the consent issue was the big one. So they also
It's really warm. Yeah, I don't think you need a jacket.
You might just need to mute yourself there, sorry. So it might be that actually they said that the things that we need to do, so we got them to think through solving the problem for us, was that we needed to make sure that actually it truly was age appropriate. They said sometimes they didn't understand the information, and even though it may have been written for their age group, actually the volume of it meant that they couldn't take it all on and they weren't necessarily sure. So to see actually if it could be broken down, to see if there was a way to make it, you know, to ask it and explain it and then show it to them so that it was broken down over a number of different sessions or conversations. But also to think through some of the issues that they'd had around who actually can give consent and who overrides who. So if their parents said no and they said yeah, then, you know, who kind of like wins out in that discussion? And actually, how can you get brokerage and support to go through that? The next was about involvement in research design. So love the quote they came up with. So tell them that today's research is tomorrow's standard of care. So you know, they really wanted us to, you know, within that, think about how we could be creative about getting them involved, how we could make sure that we go to them, but also a little bit like I said about, you know, we work with all different groups and we've got a number of different ways that they can get involved. You know, are there different ways that they could be involved within the research design? So does it have to be a focus group, or could there be some surveys that go on maybe in a school nearby that where everybody can contribute to, you know, framing the research? Or could it be that there's kind of like a mixed methods approach to each stage of children and young people's involvement across the whole research piece? Because what they have said to us and what we've seen through our programs is that, you know, one size doesn't fit all. So not all young people want to be involved in all meetings at every stage. Some young people want to dip in and out. And actually, some of them would just love to be able to give you their one view rather than to have to, you know, come to a focus group, for example. So is there different ways within the research design that you could go to them, but actually you could use lots of different creative ways to get their voice involved in making a difference? And the next one was about research process. So they said that, you know, for them, it was all about coming back to this principle of, you know, good communication in a way that we can understand it. So if you haven't used Hemingway app online, which is a website, even though it says it's an app, you basically can pull your, and then what you can do is you can click go and it will tell you how old is the reader, and it will highlight your words and your sentences and say if you're aiming for someone who's maybe age 7, you need to change these phrases to make it meet their reading age, which is actually really handy when you're doing something. But again, you know, they were very clear that the research process, we should really think about it as maybe being, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 different parts, and children and people might want to volunteer or be involved in 1, in 3, or all of them, and to see if we can break it down into chunks rather than trying to get children and people to sign up at the start for everything or for a long piece of work, because actually it doesn't really work for them all the time. But one thing that they did want us to think about is actually how, you know, by having all those different chunks means that we have a bigger reach, that we've got more scope to get more voices in, and we've got the opportunity to hear more, but actually engage more and educate more on child health research. So we also came up with a couple of things that might help workers to use the research charter, or things to talk about. So, you know, training, you've mentioned, resources, having protected time, you know, thinking about actually how you can form your own workers' community of practice around the research and us charter, but really to have children and young people as part of that as well. And, you know, we use the Simon Sinek model a lot in our work, just to, you know, really think about how do we engage children and people towards the end as well. And, you know, it really is about starting with the why rather than going to the what. So, you know, our why is our belief, which is today's research is tomorrow's standard of care, from that brilliant quote from a young person. And then get them to think about actually, you know, how we can make a difference together. So once we've found all this out and we want to revolutionise tomorrow's standard of care, or whatever it might be, you know, how can we do this together to make a difference? And how might that work for a 7-year-old, and how might that work for, you know, a 16-year-old or an aspiring medic who, you know, might be at our upper age, closer to kind of like 21, 22. And then for the what, you know, very simply, they just said, you've got to stick to visual. We've got to take time to chunk it up and have step-to-step guides, but, you know, to really think about using their creativity as well with videos and, you know, social media and, you know, anything that helps to just break it down a little bit. And I guess their kind of like closing statement was about, you know, thinking about paediatricians needing to be clear with children and young people about what research is, what will happen, and how they can get involved. To stop using jargon or words that might mean something different for children and young people. And there's a really good like little story about when we started the Research&Us project, and some of you might have heard this before, that actually we were, you know, doing some word association at the very start. So, you know, what does research mean to you? What does doctor mean to you? What does this mean to you? And we said, you know, what does clinical mean to you? What does medical mean to you? And what does trial mean to you? And when we say, what does medical trial or clinical trial mean to you? You know, one, they thought that it was a dodgy doctor that was up in court, or they thought that actually if they got involved, they would have to pay after 30 days. And that's because they were very used to getting free trials. So trial Netflix, trial this, trial that. But after 30 days, that's when something happens that you didn't really agree to and you have to start paying. So the use of language is key. That even talking about things like trial or research or medical or clinical and putting words together might create a different association to a different age group to how we might be intending it. So, you know, we don't want to be putting people off by thinking that it's something dodgy going on. Now, because of time, and I know that you've had a little bit of a later start to this session, there's a couple of different slides here which you can read more about when you get them through, which is about projects that children and young people have done over COVID to collect research findings or to do their own research. So the COVID book club I've mentioned. And then there was also one about mental health in a crisis, where children and young people did a review during the first lockdown as to how they were able to access mental health support and what was missing. But both of those projects have got different reports written by children and young people and resources on the website, so you can have a look at them and pull out some of the ways that the projects worked, or you can get in touch. And like I said, we've got loads of resources that you can access free online. We also offer free information, advice and guidance to anyone that wants to talk through their engagement project, or to you know, get some signposting tips, and you just get in touch with &Us for that. But also we've got a free newsletter that comes out 6 times a year, where we pull together all the best practice and resources like this and then share them straight to you, so you can join the engagement collaborative if you would like to do that. And normally we ask people to drop an emoji into the chat just to say how you're feeling after the session, or what you thought about, you know, what you've heard. So if you want to get your emojis going, you are very welcome. And that is the end of that.